Okay, this is EKG Chapter 1, the anatomy of the heart structure. So for a lot of you guys, this is going to be review. However, we're going to go ahead and hit all of it. So we're going to talk about the chambers of the heart, atria, the ventricles, the location, the shape, the layers of the heart, the name of the valves. We're going to talk about arteries, veins, and capillaries. And then we're going to discuss pulmonary and systemic circulation. So let's get started. So first thing we'll do is we'll kind of dive into the heart here, obviously. So it's essentially a muscle that's specifically known as the myocardium. So when we refer to the myocardium, we're talking about the heart muscle itself. That's what enables the heart to contract and pump blood effectively throughout the body. Now you can think of the heart as a two-sided pump. It has a right side and a left side, and they each serve a pretty important role. So the right side, it receives deoxygenated blood from the body and pumps it to the lungs for oxygenation. Meanwhile, the left side, it takes that freshly oxygenated blood from the lungs and pumps it out to the rest of the body. Now this dual pump system, it's going to be pretty important for maintaining proper circulation and ensuring that every part of the body gets the oxygen that it needs. So just remember, we're talking about a two-sided pump here, and we're going to talk about both sides. So we'll talk about the structure of the heart first. So we start with the atria, which are the upper chambers of the heart. So you might have heard, the term atria used in the plural form, since there's two of them. There's one on the left and then there's one on the right. Now these chambers are separated by a structure called the intraatrial septum, and then that septum plays a crucial role in keeping the oxygen-rich blood in the left atrium separate from the oxygen-poor blood in the right atrium. That ensures that our body gets the right type of blood where it needs it. Now if we look at the outside of the heart, we find the coronary sulcus. That's a groove that surrounds the heart and serves an important purpose. It acts as a divider between the atria and the ventricles, which are the lower chambers of the heart. And we'll see all that on a pretty picture here in a second. So let's talk about the ventricles. So those are the lower chambers of the heart. Now, unlike the atria, the ventricles have thicker walls. It's essential because they need to generate enough force to pump the blood away from the heart. Now, the ventricles are separated by the interventricular septum, which is crucial for maintaining the proper flow of blood. So when the ventricles contract, they push blood into the two major pathways. So the right ventricle sends blood to the lungs for oxygenation through the pulmonic circulation, while the left ventricle pumps oxygen-rich blood throughout the entire body, and that's via the systemic circulation. And then additionally, the left ventricle plays a key role in supplying the myocardium, or the heart muscle, itself with oxygenated blood, and that's going to be vital for keeping the heart healthy and functioning properly. So here's what we're talking about. We see the right atrium and the right ventricle and the intraatrial septum, and then the left atrium and the left ventricle. And that's pretty much what we've been talking about. Now, talk about where it's situated. We're talking about location, size, shape of the heart. So let's talk about where the heart's situated in the body. So the heart's located in the mediastinum, which is in an area in the chest. It sits right in front of the spinal column and behind the sternum, and that's just right, nestled kind of just right between the lungs. So in this same mediastinal space, we also find other important structures such as the trachea, the esophagus, the thymus, the lymph nodes. So, it's kind of interesting to note about 2/3 of the heart lies to the left of the midline of the body. Now, if we look at its positioning, the apex of the heart is just above the diaphragm, and the base is at the level of the third rib. So in terms of the size of the heart, it's roughly the same size as the owner's closed fist, which gives us kind of a tangible way to visualize how compact and vital this organ is in our bodies. So here's what we're talking about. We can kind of get a good idea of where it's situated, and then we talked about the shape. You see the inferior border, the superior border, the right and left border. And then here's your big old full-size pic. So the pericardium, we're talking about the layers of the heart. So the pericardium is a closed two-layered sac, and that surrounds the heart. The outer layer, known as the parietal pericardium, that's made of some tough, non-elastic, fibrous connective tissue. That layer provides necessary support and protection. It's important to note that the parietal pericardium, it's in direct contact with the pleura, which is the membrane surrounding the lung. So that relationship, that close relationship, helps maintain the heart's position in the thoracic cavity. And then we see the visceral pericardium. That's a thin serous inner layer of the pericardium. It directly covers the heart. Between this layer and the heart itself is a small space, and it's filled with just a little amount of fluid, typically around 10 to 50 cc's or mils. This fluid helps reduce friction as the heart beats. So the visceral pericardium, it's contiguous with the epicardium. Now the outer layer of the heart, or that is the outer layer of the heart. So it's also kind of important that the pericarditis, when we talk about pericarditis, it refers to the inflammation of the serous pericardium, which can lead to discomfort and then other complications as well. So the visceral pericardium, that plays a crucial role in heart function, but when there's an excessive amount of fluid in the pericardial sac, it can lead to a pretty serious condition known as cardiac tamponade. So that occurs when that fluid accumulates in that sac and it puts pressure on the heart. And then what it does is it hinders its ability to pump effectively. So cardiac tamponade, it's considered an extreme emergency, requires immediate medical attention to prevent some pretty severe complications or death as well. Really not a lot we can do for that other than recognition, so we get moving. And then the epicardium, the smooth outer surface of the heart. Now this layer plays a vital role in protecting the heart and facilitating its movement within the chest cavity. So the coronary arteries, they're located on the surface of the epicardium, and then that provides that essential blood supply to the heart muscle itself. So this close proximity ensures that the heart receives the oxygen and the nutrients to function effectively. And the myocardium. So that's that thick middle layer of the heart. It's made up of those cardiac muscle cells. So that layer is crucial because it's responsible for the heart's ability to contract and pump blood throughout the body. So the strength and efficiency of the myocardium is going to be vital for maintaining proper circulation, ensuring that oxygen-rich blood, that it reaches all the organs and tissues. Obviously, without a healthy myocardium, the heart's not going to be able to pump well, so that cardiac output would be compromised, and that would lead to some pretty serious health issues. And then the endocardium. So that's the innermost layer of the heart. That's composed of endothelial tissues. So this delicate layer, it lines the heart chambers and it covers the heart valves. And it plays a crucial role in maintaining a smooth surface for blood flow. So the endocardium requires a constant and uninterrupted supply of oxygen to function properly, and it's going to be vital for overall health of the heart. Any compromise to its oxygen supply is going to lead to some pretty serious complications and really affect the heart's ability to pump. So let's talk about some basics. We're going to talk about the valves of the heart. So there are 4 valves in the heart that make sure the blood flows in the right direction. So you can kind of think of them like traffic lights, making sure everything moves smoothly and in one direction. So we're talking about 2 main sets of valves. We see atrioventricular valves, and then we also see semilunar valves. And we'll talk about those in just a second. So let's break down the first set of valves, the atrioventricular valves. Now these sit between the atria and the ventricles, like a one-way street sign. So they let blood flow from the atria into the ventricles, but they make sure it doesn't go the other way. So no U-turns allowed here. One of these valves is the tricuspid valve. It's called the tricuspid valve because it has 3 flaps or cusps. You'll find it between the right atrium and the right ventricle. So next up, we got the mitral valve, also called the bicuspid valve. So this one has 2 cusps, so a little different from the tricuspid valve that we just talked about. It's located between the left atrium and the left ventricle. This valve plays a key role in keeping blood flowing properly from the left side of the heart. Now let's talk about the semilunar valves. So these valves make sure blood doesn't flow back into the ventricles once it's been pumped out. So basically they're there to prevent any backflow and keep everything moving in the right direction. Now, each of these semilunar valves has 3 cusps, which are shaped like little crescent moons, hence the name semilunar. So we'll go a little more into detail on that, but just remember, they're key players in keeping the blood flowing smoothly out of the heart. So the heart features 2 key semilunar valves. We see the pulmonic valve and the aortic valve. So the pulmonic valve is located between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery. It opens to allow deoxygenated blood to flow from the right ventricle into the pulmonary artery, directing it to the lungs for oxygenation. Now, once the ventricle relaxes, the pulmonic valve closes to prevent backflow into the heart. And then we have the aortic valve. So that's situated between the left ventricle and the trunk of the aorta. So the aortic valve opens to allow oxygen-rich blood to flow from the left ventricle into the aorta, where it's then distributed to the body. Now, similar to the pulmonic valve, it closes when the ventricles relaxes, and that ensures that the blood does not flow back into the heart. So both of these valves are obviously going to be really important for maintaining that unidirectional flow of blood, and that just supports effective circulation. Now let's talk about how those valves actually open and close. So it all comes down to pressure changes inside the heart. So when the ventricles contract, that's called ventricular systole, the pressure inside them goes up, and as the pressure rises, the AV valves, those atrioventricular valves, they slam shut to prevent blood from flowing backwards into the atria. At the same time, the semilunar valves open up, letting blood flow out of the ventricles into the pulmonary artery and the aorta. Now, this whole process, it happens in sync to make sure that the blood is efficiently pumped out and into the body. Now, let's talk about ventricular diastole. So this is when the ventricles relax and the pressure inside them drops. So think of it like the heart taking a little break. So this relaxation phase is super important because it gives the heart time to fill up with blood. Now, as the pressure falls, the AV valves open, letting blood from the atria into the ventricles. Meanwhile, the semilunar valves stay closed so that no blood flows backward from the arteries into the ventricles. So this phase ensures that the ventricles are ready to go with a full load of blood for the next contraction, which helps keep the heart working efficiently and the blood circulating smoothly. So blood vessels, talking about some blood vessels here, they kind of serve as the containers for blood. So they play a crucial role in the circulatory system, and we see 3 main types. We see arteries, veins, and capillaries. Now arteries, they carry oxygen-rich blood away from the heart to various parts of the body. They are thick and muscular walls that can withstand high pressure as the heart pumps blood into them. And then veins transport deoxygenated blood back to the heart. So they have thinner walls compared to the arteries, and they contain valves to prevent backflow, ensuring that the blood flows in one direction. And then we see capillaries. And these are the smallest blood vessels connecting arteries and veins. Capillaries facilitate that exchange of oxygen, nutrients, and waste products between the blood and the surrounding tissues. So their thin walls allow for this essential exchange, supporting cellular function throughout the entire body. So let's talk about the arteries for a minute. These are really important players in the circulatory system, and they've got some serious muscle. So their walls are thick and strong, which helps them handle the high pressure that comes from the heart's contractions. Now, the main job of the arteries is to carry oxygen-rich blood away from the heart and send it to all the tissues and organs in the body. But they do more than just that. Arteries also help regulate blood pressure, so they can adjust their diameter or how wide they are to control the blood flow. This change in size helps maintain the right amount of pressure and flow depending on what the body needs at any given moment. So whether you're running, relaxing, or anything in between, your arteries are constantly adjusting to keep everything running smoothly. So these arteries are the big guys that carry that oxygen-rich blood away from the heart and deliver it to all parts of the body. So they're built to handle high pressure and move blood quickly and efficiently. So the arteries branch out, they turn into smaller vessels called arterioles. Now, these tiny vessels play a big role in managing blood flow and pressure throughout the body. The walls of our arterioles are muscular, so they can tighten or constrict, or they can relax or dilate, adjusting how much blood gets to the different tissues. So this is super important because your body needs change all the time, whether you're, as we mentioned, exercising or resting, anything in between. So the arteries and the arterioles, they work together to make sure everything gets oxygen and nutrients that it needs. So here just talks about the different layers. You'll see that the tunica intima, the innermost layer, is connective and elastic, and it just kind of goes through that. And here's what we're talking about also, looking at each one. So you see a typical vein, typical capillary, typical artery. Now let's talk about the coronary arteries. So these are the arteries that supply oxygenated blood to the heart muscle itself. Now without them, the heart wouldn't be able to do its job of pumping blood to the rest of the body. These are the two main coronary, or not these are, but there are two main coronary arteries. The right coronary artery and then the left coronary artery. So the right coronary artery takes care of the right side of the heart, and then the left coronary artery splits into two branches. So you have the left anterior descending artery and the circumflex artery, which supplies the left side and the back of the heart. So these are going to be pretty key to keeping the heart working properly by delivering oxygen-rich blood and make sure the heart has the energy it needs to keep beating and working in a steady fashion. So let's take a closer look at the left coronary artery. So pretty important vessel. It splits into two main branches. You have the left anterior descending artery and the circumflex artery. So the left anterior descending artery, or the LAD, delivers blood to most of the front part of the heart, and that's including the front wall of the left ventricle. So this part of the heart is super important because it helps pump blood out to the rest of the body. Then we see the circumflex artery. On the other hand, curves around to the back side of the heart and supplies blood to the lateral wall of the left ventricle and parts of the left atrium. So together, these two arteries, they make sure the heart muscle gets the oxygen and the nutrients that it needs so it can continue just working properly and helping to perfuse the body. Now we'll talk about the right coronary artery. So this one plays a crucial role in keeping the heart supplied with blood, especially to the back portion of the heart. So the artery branches out to deliver blood to the lateral wall of the right ventricle and the other parts. Now one of its important branches is the posterior interventricular artery, which takes care of the back and the bottom parts of the left ventricle. But that's not all. The right coronary artery also helps supply blood to part of the heart's electrical conduction system, which is key to keeping the heart's rhythm steady. So this artery is not only feeding the muscle, but it's also helping the heart stay in sync and then function properly. So that coronary sinus, or also called the great cardiac vein, that's an important part of the heart's circulation system. So its job is to collect the deoxygenated blood from the veins of the myocardium. Just remember, it's just that fancy word for the heart muscle. After it gathers the blood, the coronary sinus drains into the right atrium. Now that's crucial because it helps bring the used blood back to the heart where it can be pumped to the lungs to get reoxygenated. So the coronary sinus is key to keeping the blood flow cycle running smoothly and efficiently. And then we have the vessels that bring blood back to the heart, also called venules. Now venules are smaller vessels that carry blood at low pressure, working under much less stress than the arteries. Kind of like the return route for the blood after it's traveled through the body. Now capillaries. So these are those tiny little blood vessels with the thinnest walls of all. Even though they're small, they're super important because, as we've talked about, this is where the vast majority of gas exchange happens. Oxygen gets delivered to the tissues and carbon dioxide is picked up and to be carried away. So capillary is kind of where all that magic happens in terms of getting oxygen where it's needed and then also getting rid of the waste. Now circulation, basically the journey that the blood takes as it moves through a network of vessels, but always coming back to where it started, the heart. So the system is key to making sure that oxygen-rich blood get where it's needed, delivering nutrients to all of your tissues and organs. So as that blood flows through the body, it keeps cycling, going from the heart branching out to the body and then returning deoxygenated blood back to the heart. So this whole process is essential for homeostasis. If you don't remember that word, we're basically just saying kind of keeping things balanced and supporting everything that your body does. So good circulation is obviously going to be vital for keeping people healthy, making sure that your body functions properly. So here we see just the circulation. You see all the major veins, the major arteries. Over there you have the capillary beds, the veins leading into the arteries. How it works through the capillaries. All right, last couple points here. So I'll break down the blood flow between the heart and the lungs, which is known as the pulmonary circulation. So it all starts when deoxygenated blood leaves the heart through the right ventricle, and then it heads into the pulmonary artery. So this artery carries blood to the lungs, where it picks up fresh oxygen and it gets rid of carbon dioxide. Now once the blood is oxygenated, it travels back to the heart through the pulmonary veins, entering the left atrium. So this whole process is key to getting oxygen into the blood so it can be sent out to the rest of the body, keeping everything working just right. Now we'll talk about systemic circulation. So that's the blood flow between the heart and the rest of the body. So it starts when oxygenated blood leaves the left ventricle of the heart and heads out through the arteries, delivering oxygen and nutrients to all of the body's tissues. So as the blood travels through the capillaries, it drops off those essential nutrients and it picks up waste products like carbon dioxide. Then the deoxygenated blood makes its way back to the veins, eventually reaching the right atrium of the heart. So this cycle keeps everything running smoothly by making sure that the body gets the oxygen and nutrients it needs. And then, as we've mentioned, it also clears out the waste to keep things functioning properly. And that's it. That's the end of chapter 1. So we'll see you guys for chapter 2.